Hi all, we are PTE for sure. We are providing complete training to successfully crack PTE Exam with your desired score. We will provide you tips and tricks to get 65 and 79 in PTE. After enrolling, our course's material would be provided online. For more information, kindly contact through WhatsApp or other details mentioned in the video.
One of the social issues faced by the state of Alaska is the lack of mental and emotional well-being of the Native Alaskans. It is very unfortunate that many of the Native Americans are living under poor conditions throughout the country. In the cases of Native Alaskans, even virtually entire villages are suffering from a lack of mental and emotional well-being, which includes continuing poor physical and mental health. Alcohol abuse, domestic violence, homicides, and suicides are frequent among them, which of course, lead to families falling apart. It is tragic to see that many children are abused and not educated properly. As a matter of fact, the children themselves are abusing alcohol and other chemicals, and the rate is increasing over the time. Since parents are suffering from mental illnesses and alcohol abuse, they can't take care of their children, so many children are being taken care of by others or simply neglected. Therefore, we can conclude that Alaskan Natives are losing hold of their communities, cultural identities, and most importantly, their childhoods. So you can see how serious the issue is. Plus, rather than making a living for themselves, they are depending on public services and subsidies. They have lost control of and responsibility for their economy and governing institutions.
There comes a time in a desert ant's life when a piece of food is too large to ignore, but too heavy to lift, and the only way to get it home is to adopt a new style of walking. The long-legged and speedy Cataglyphus fortis normally covers ground with a three-legged stride that moves two legs forwards on one side, and one on the other. For the next step, the insect mirrors the move with its other three legs. But recordings of ants in the Tunisian desert reveal that when faced with oversized lumps of food 10 times their own weight, the forward tripod walking style is abandoned. Unable to lift the morsels in their mandibles, the ants drag the food backwards instead, moving all 6 legs independently. "This is the first time we have seen this in any ants," said lead author Sarah Pfeffer at the University of Ulm in Germany. The ants' long legs already help keep their bodies away from the scorching desert floor and enable them to speed around at up to 60 centimeters per second. Think of Usain Bolt, who has very long legs compared to body size. The desert floor is also very hot, so the further away their bodies are from the surface, the better, said co-author Matthias Wittlinger. The ants have also evolved to function at body temperatures of 50 C in a desert where temperatures can soar to 70 C. They're basically just trying to get out of the heat, he added.
You might think that most of the patients at sleep clinics are being treated for sleeplessness, commonly referred to as insomnia, but that is not the case. The majority of sleep clinic patients suffer from disorders of excessive sleep, or hypersomnia. While most insomniacs somehow manage to drag themselves through the day and function at acceptable, although not optimal levels, this is not so for people who suffer from hypersomnia. They are incapacitated by irresistible urges to sleep during the day, often in inappropriate situations at business meetings, in supermarkets, or at parties. Even more dangerous is their failure to remain awake when driving or operating machinery. Falling asleep in such situations could obviously be life-threatening. Many hypersomniacs suffer from narcolepsy, for which the primary symptom is excessive daytime sleepiness. Though not apparent in childhood, this symptom most often appears for the first time during the teen years and continues throughout a person's life. The sleep attacks may occur as many as 15 to 20 times during the course of the day and last for periods from 15 minutes up to 2 hours. What can be done to help those suffering from narcolepsy? There are certain drugs that can help, and specialists suggest voluntary napping to decrease the frequency of such sleep attacks.
So the pace at which human minds have evolved over the last 500,000 years and more recently the last 200,000 years, has been so frighteningly rapid that the evolution of cognitive function and perception can only occur in a small number of genes. If one needed to adapt dozens of genes changes in concert, in order to acquire the penetrating minds that we now have, which our ancestors 5,000 years ago didn't have, the evolution could not have taken place, it could not have occurred so quickly. And for that reason alone, one begins to really suspect that the genetic differences between people who lived 5,000 years ago is evidence that the difference between their cognitive functions and ours is not actually as large. Therefore, a rather small number of genes may be responsible for the powerful minds that humans have, which most of us now possess.
The history of software is of course very new. And the whole IT industry is really only 67 years old, which is extraordinary, and to be so close to the birth of a major new technology, a major new discipline, is quite remarkable given where we got to in those 67 years. And the progression has been not so much a progression as a stampede, because Moore's law, the rapid expansion in the power of computing and the rapid fall of the cost of computing and storage and communications has made it feasible for information technology to move into all sorts of areas of life that were never originally envisaged. What has happened is that there has been, as I said, a stampede for people to pick the low-hanging fruit. And that is what's guided the development of software and information technology over the past decades, and continues to do so, with a number of consequences that we will explore.
A leader can define or clarify goals by issuing a memo or an executive order, an edict or a fatwa or a tweet, by passing a law, barking a command, or presenting an interesting idea in a meeting of colleagues. Leaders can mobilize people's energies in ways that range from subtle, quiet persuasion to the coercive threat or the use of deadly force. Sometimes a charismatic leader such as Martin Luther King Jr. can define goals and mobilize energies through rhetoric and the power of example. We can think of leadership as a spectrum, in terms of both visibility and the power the leader wields. On one end of the spectrum, we have the most visible, authoritative leaders like the President of the United States or the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, or a dictator such as Hitler or Gaddafi. At the opposite end of the spectrum is casual, low-key leadership found in countless situations every day around the world, leadership that can make a significant difference to the individuals whose lives are touched by it. Over the centuries, the first kind, the out in front, authoritative leadership, has generally been exhibited by men. Some men in positions of great authority, including Nelson Mandela, have chosen a strategy of leading from behind. More often, however, top leaders have been quite visible in their exercise of power. Women, as well as some men, have provided casual, low-key leadership behind the scenes. But this pattern has been changing, as more women have taken up opportunities for visible, authoritative leadership.
So, we were founded just over 10 years ago, when I was in the Royal Academy, a museum in the center of London, with my 3 children, at the Aztec exhibition. I don't know if any of you saw it. I had an older child and 2 younger children, twins, strapped in a pushchair, and one of my children, 3 years old, shouted, and I've never denied he shouted, "Monster, monster." At this statue, which looked just like a monster, had snakes for hair, a big beak for a nose. And, I thought, this is fantastic. I've got a 3-year-old that's appreciating art. How good can it get? So, I bent down and I said, "Yes, it looks just like a monster," and, at that moment, a room warden came over, a gallery assistant came over and said we were being too noisy, and threw us out to the wrong family. I was, at that time, a journalist with the Guardian newspaper, and 2 days later wrote a big piece in the Guardian about being thrown out of the Royal Academy. What was really interesting was, by the end of that day, we had, at the paper, over 500 emails from other families saying, "Museums aren't working for us. Let's try and make it work." So, that's what we did. In the Guardian, we set up a campaign. We called it the Kids in Museums campaign, but it didn't really exist. It was just a few pages. We ran loads of stories on it. I began touring the country talking about how to make your museum family friendly.
If you like our video, kindly subscribe our channel and also press below bell icon. Thank you.